What's up guys, Coyote Works here. So as you guys know, I spend a lot of time kind of preparing, planning for, and developing the skills and the gear for this idea of bugging out to a wilderness or desert kind of a survival situation. And the idea is that I would do this in the event that society collapsed to the point that it was just too dangerous or there just weren't enough resources to survive in civilization. But one of the comments I frequently get on my videos is something along the lines of how ridiculous it is to think about doing that. And usually the comment indicates that that's a stupid idea because there's going to be hundreds of thousands of other people doing exactly the same thing, and they're all going to be running around madly in the woods, killing all of the animals, shooting at each other, and I'm not going to have any game to hunt, and I'll have to spend my entire life defending my camp from all these hordes of people. So I thought I'd take a couple of minutes and kind of break this down for you guys and show you why I believe in my situation, that's not something I have to worry about. So here's a map of the state of Oregon. This area here, outlined by this black line, is kind of my area of operation. So in the event of a shit hits the fan situation, society collapses, and there's no resources left in civilization, and it's too violent there, this is where I'm going. So let me quickly break down kind of our whole state, and let's really try to identify what that true number of people is that has the potential to come out here into my area and compete with me. So the first thing to understand about the state is we have about 3.5 million people or so in the state of Oregon, roughly. The majority of those people live right along here. We call this the I-5 corridor, the Willamette Valley, and this is where the cities of Portland, Salem, Eugene, all our major population centers are. There's somewhere around 3 million people that live here. 3 million people is a lot of people, right? But here's the thing, these 3 million people will never make it to here. And there's a couple of reasons why. First, let's talk about the physical barrier. Right here, down the state, is a mountain range called the Cascade Mountains. So the first thing to realize is that there's a huge barrier between these people and where I am over here. There's about 120 miles from here to where I live, 120 to 130 miles from here to where I live. And that 120 to 130 miles crosses this vast mountain range. There's about 9 major roads that cross that mountain range. But the reality is if there's no power, no gas, no ability to be able to drive these roads, most of these people are not physically going to be able to get to here. But now real quickly, let's look at this 3 million people here and let's break this down a little bit further. So when we break down this 3 million people, that 3 million number includes everyone, young, old, sick, healthy, handicapped, not handicapped, that includes everyone. So let's just say the percentage of that 3 million people that's too young to travel on their own, too old to travel on their own, dependent on medications, let's just say that number is around 1 million people, roughly a third of that population, for one reason or another, doesn't have the physical ability to be able to go out into the wild and survive. So now we're talking 2 million people that have the physical ability to do that. Well, we can cut that number in half again because we know, roughly speaking, only half of all Americans own firearms. So 1 million of those 2 million people can't hunt, can't defend themselves, they don't even own a gun. So they're not even contenders in this whole thing. They're just sheep that are stuck back here depending on whatever resources the government decides to throw their direction if and when it does. So now we're down to 1 million people that own guns. So 1 million people have at least one of the tools necessary to go out here. But out of those 1 million people that own guns, how many of them have any level of training with those guns? And I'm going to say we could probably easily cut that number in half again, because I've been to a lot of classes and a lot of schools and around a lot of people who shoot guns, and it's a really small percentage of the people who own guns who are actually proficient at them. So now we're down to, let's say, roughly 500,000 people. Now out of that 500,000 people who are proficient with their gun, their tool, how many of those people also have the skills to navigate, have skills to hunt, have skills to successfully get game? And I'm going to say we could probably pretty easily cut that number in half again. So my guess is that out of these 3 million people over here, probably not more than about 250 or 3,000 of them even have the tools, the skills, and the ability to navigate the backcountry and hunt or compete for resources or be a threat. So now out of those 300 people, how many of them would want to get all the way across this mountain range to go out into some of the most godforsaken country in the state to compete with me? So the idea that I have a lot to worry about from this population over here is just ridiculous. And you can take this same kind of math and apply it over the entire country. You know that only half of the population own guns. You know it's a small percentage of the population that owns guns that's proficient with them. You know it's an even smaller percentage of that population that has any kind of outdoor wilderness survival type skills or hunting skills. So very quickly these numbers shrink really fast. So now let's talk a little bit about my area out here specifically. So in my area, where I've drawn this line is roughly 200 miles from the north to the southern border of the state. Going to the east, it's about 250 miles. That's 50,000 square miles this area represents. There are 3 major communities in that 50,000 square miles. One is the community that I live near, a town called Primeville, with a population of 10,760 people. There's a town called Burns, another thriving population, another one of the big population centers out here with a population of 2,786 people. And then you have the bustling metropolis of Lakeview, Oregon with 2,387 people. So you've got about 15,000 people between those 3 major towns out here. Now, the total population here is somewhere around 50,000 people. But again, that 50,000 people includes the young, the old, the infirmed, the handicapped, the disabled. It includes all those. So we can probably cut that number pretty easily in half with a little bit of elimination. And let's just say we have 25,000 able-bodied, skilled people in this area. That's 25,000 people in 50,000 square miles. That's 2 square miles per person out here. That's 2 square miles, and the population of game and everything off of all this area is plenty to support 25,000 people out here. Okay, so now let's talk about the country out here a little bit. So this is harsh country, hard winters, hot summers, it's desert. 10 to 12 annual inches of rainfall a year, and most of that comes in the form of snow. So the only way to survive in this country is if you know where the resources are, if you know where the game are, at what times of year, where they migrate, where the water sources are. And this is where I've spent my entire life exploring. Virtually all of my free time, I'm out here in the desert backcountry exploring. So when you consider the harshness of the landscape, the barrier of the Cascade Mountain Range, the low population density out here, it's just ridiculous to think that there will be hundreds of thousands of people out here competing with me. They A, can't get there, and B, if they don't know this country like the back of their hand, they won't survive there. Most people in today's society, if they left this town and ventured out into here, would be dead within 3 days. That's the reality of it. So here's the thing. This may not be the situation everywhere in the world, but the situation for me is that throngs of people competing with me for resources out here is not a concern that I have to deal with. So I hope that gives you guys a better idea of my plan and why I don't believe that it's a big concern of mine to be dealing with hundreds of thousands of other people competing with me for resources out there. But I also want you guys to keep in mind that at the end of the day, your plan has to work for you, your environment, your strengths, your weaknesses, and at the end of it all, it's all theoretical until the shit does hit the fan. And when the shit does hit the fan, it's only going to be us that are going to pay the price for how weak or how strong our plan is. So that's my 2 cents on that. Coyote Works out.